Hello, ladies and gentlemen, I am Navy, and today I am going to read two stories from the subreddit r/nuclear revenge. These stories including some neighborhood drama and a lady that is such an asshole that she terrorizes kittens. So let's not waste any more time and get right into it. Oh yeah, and hold on to your seats. First title being My neighbor destroyed another neighbor's business because she abused kittens. So, I'm not sure if this goes here. This story is only minimally about me and I'm barely connected. Just let me know if I should post elsewhere. So, a few months back, I found my cat, Gigi, on the street. He was so young, maybe a couple months old, so I felt as if I couldn't just leave him there. He also looked extremely malnourished, and it was so heartbreaking to see. Just in case he was an escaped kitten, I posted flyers all over the neighborhood and on lost pet forums for my area. Absolutely no one contacted me, so I took him to the vet and registered him as my pet. Vaccinated, chipped, and neutered when he was old enough. When I first found him, I thought he was a Russian blue. He looked exactly like them down to the face shape and eye color. As he got older, the stripes he has never faded like breeders said they would, so I abandoned the idea that he is a Russian blue. Besides, it's downright preposterous that an expensive breed of cat would be abandoned like that, right? Out of curiosity, even though he's legally my cat now, I decided to check the neighborhood watch and lost pet forums. That's when I found a post from one of my neighbors going absolutely nuclear on another neighbor, exposing her and her business. I'll call the nuclear neighbor Daisy and the total waste of air Karen. From what I read on Daisy's post, she feeds the local strays. There's one in particular, a tabby, that likes to hang out in her lawn. Her next door neighbor Karen is a cat breeder specifically for Russian blue cats. Karen hates Daisy because she feeds the strays and was worried about them ruining her business. One day, Daisy hears screaming coming from Karen's house, sounds of objects being thrown, general commotions. She stepped outside ready to call the police, believing it to be a domestic disturbance. Instead, she watched Karen chase the tabby out of her house, smacking it with a broom and trying to kill it. They get into an argument which prompts Daisy to write about it for the first time on the neighborhood watch. About 4 or 5 months later, there's more disturbance at Karen's house. Yelling, screaming, bumping around. Once again, Daisy steps outside to see if they need help and sees Karen angrily stomping out of her house with a box. She walks down the street a bit and Daisy discreetly follows her. Karen reaches the tiny playground in the neighborhood and throws the box into the bushes. Daisy goes to the bush and sees a bunch of kittens in the box, around the box and in the bushes. She tries to grab them all, but a couple run off and she can't catch them. Daisy is pissed and brings the kittens that she managed to catch home and goes to confront Karen. Karen is also mad at her, blaming Daisy's feeding of the strays for losing her thousands of dollars. The tabby that hangs out around the house apparently got Karen's cat pregnant and she couldn't sell the kittens because they are not pure breed and it's obvious. After their argument, Daisy takes the kittens to the vet and most have injuries. Broken tails, injured ribs, etc. Once Daisy got home, she reported Karen for animal abuse and then started to expose Karen online. Everywhere she could, Daisy told people not to buy from Karen, even going to her breeder page and exposing what she did to the kittens. From what she knows, Karen completely lost her business. This every month Daisy will post about Karen and warn people not to buy from her just in case. Now I'm not sure if Gigi is a part of the kittens that come from that. He could very well be just a grey tabby from strays, but the timeline matches up. I'm not sure if Karen is going to face legal charges for the abuse she did to those kittens, but I sure damn hope so. Wow. Just wow. How can you be such an asshole to some little kittens that didn't do anything just because you couldn't sell them? I've got just a few things to say to these kinds of people who are terrible to some little creatures that didn't do anything. You, mom, your whole entire family, and go to hell. You are not deserving of this life. Or, as a Redditor said in the comments, those who cannot avenge themselves need a hero to be the hands of vengeance for them. And now to the next story. But, shame to the First Lady. So, what happens when neighborhood punks decide to beat up a veteran's son? Apologies for the length, I'll be sure to include a TLDR at the end. All names have been changed to protect the innocent. This is actually a story my dad told me about one of his childhood friends, George, who recently passed away. Dad and George grew up in a booming city in what's now known as the Rust Belt. You were pretty much guaranteed a job at a major car plant in town. You were pretty much guaranteed a job at a plant in town as soon as you got out of high school. George was one of those people that wasn't. Dad accepted a scholarship to his dream school to study engineering. During the weekends and holidays he'd come home and hang out with his buddies including George. One afternoon, Dad gets a phone call from Grandma. George had been jumped after work and had the metaphorical tar beaten out of him. For a while, it looked like he wasn't going to make it. By some miracle, George pulled through but was in such bad shape that he had to retire early and go on disability. While on one of his visits home, George's dad, Walter, pulls Dad aside and asks him if he knows a guy named Flynn. Dad had heard the name was one of the local troublemakers. He asked Walter why, and Walter revealed that the wallet had been found by George's body and given to him. The paramedics thought the wallet was George's. No, I have no idea why they didn't check it. Unfortunately, the city was going through financial difficulties thanks to corruption and mismanagement, to the point that they didn't have enough money to pay the police officers during the weekends. No, I'm not kidding. From 8 p.m. Friday night to 6 a.m. Monday morning, there wasn't a single police officer on duty. Since the assault took place on Friday night, there wasn't much anyone can do. Dad asked Walter what he was going to do about it. Walter looked at him with a stern face and said, "I take care of my own." That's such a badass thing to say. Walter was an army vet who had served during World War II and Korea. He never spoke about his time, claiming he was a radio technician and never left the base. He never breathed a word to anyone. Even George's mother, his wife. The full story never came out until after George's death, when a letter Walter had written before his death was found in George's possessions. After realizing that Flynn was one of the people who had destroyed George's life, Walter got in touch with his friends. He was a personable guy, you know the type, the kind who makes friends in 5 minutes. They all agreed that something had to be done, and thus Operation George's Revenge was born. Walter and his friends began observation of Flynn and would keep tabs on him. It took several weeks, but eventually Flynn and his buddies, Mac and Zeno, were overheard bragging about the attack. Knowing who to attack, they moved to the next steps. Walter's friends, some of whom worked in high places, decided to make some phone calls to their friends in the plant where all three worked. See, these friends were union. State was closed shop at the time, and discussed about what happened to George. They decided to make things difficult for them. They would remove vital tools for emergency maintenance at the last minute, put them in positions they weren't good in, and rearrange the schedule so they got the worst shifts, to name a few. They also began a whispering campaign so everyone at the plant knew what had happened. In this city back then, who you knew and what everyone thought you've done was enough to make or break you. The goal was to get them to quit, and after a year or so, all three had quit, frustrated with how they were being treated. But Walter and his friends aren't done. Not by a long shot. A few phone calls and anonymous letters later, Flynn, Mac, and Zeno were unemployable in the district. Because they hadn't been fired, they weren't entitled to severance or anything. Soon their money ran out, but they couldn't get out of the town because everyone knew from the whispering campaign what they had done to George. For the rest of their lives, Walter and his friends kept an eye on Flynn, Mac, and Zeno. Just when it appeared that they had an out, the whisper letter campaign would start again and they'd be denied an out. The three men ended up homeless and destitute alcoholics who couldn't even get state aid, and this is in a state that is known for its generous aid for those in bad straits. Walter and his friends made a contingency plan to continue this until the three men were dead using the next generation, so those men would never forget what they did to George. Nobody was able to find out anything about Flynn, Mac, and Zeno, but I wouldn't be surprised that they're still stuck and miserable. TLDR, Dad's childhood body was jumped by three troublemakers. Childhood Buddy's veteran father and his friends decide to make troublemakers' lives heck for the rest of their lives. Oh, well, that is well deserved. I don't know what to say, but it just makes me happy when I hear about these stories. Your dad's friend's life just got destroyed for nothing, but at least the miserable guys that did that to him got their lives destroyed too. So, fortunately or unfortunately, depends on how you take it, this is the end of the video, and I want you to remember to like, subscribe, and ring that bell. So, have a nice morning, evening, or night, depending on where you are.